Greetings, ISD 728, Dan Bittman, Superintendent, here to share a few updates about life as we now know it, at least for the time being. I've been doing some reflecting in the last week about how things have changed over the last few weeks. And for one, I can't imagine or couldn't imagine a time where I would pay $1.13 per gallon for gas, which was the case this last week. I have a number of students emailing and texting me, tweeting at me that they miss school and want to be back in school and I should do anything I can to help them get back. I would never have imagined that our school buildings would have been closed for 3 months out of the school year without access. I wouldn't have believed that my own children or the other 14,000 students in ISD 728 would be doing distance learning from their living rooms with a 2-day notice from the state and from the governor. I would never have imagined that we'd be serving more than 8,000 meals a day at the curb to any family or student 18 years of age or younger each and every day. I would never have imagined that all of my meetings would be done virtually and that more than 30 meetings every single week are done through Zoom or Google Hangouts, etc. And I never would have guessed that I would be on daily calls with the Commissioner of Education, the Department of Health, and many others, trying to learn as much as I could about a health pandemic. And finally, I could never have imagined that everyone would be at home for the most part, and those that venture out would be having masks and would be paying such attention to hygiene and the importance of new ways to stay healthy. So again, the list goes on. What an interesting time for all of us as families, as parents, and as administrators and staff here in ISD 728. Regardless of that situation, we realize more than ever how important our communities are and how important our schools are. What would our lives be like without schools, without daily instruction, without meals, without childcare, with all the things that we are being provided? It's an important time for us to provide leadership, and we are grateful to partner with you as we do that. Strong schools equal strong communities, and I'm proud to serve with you as superintendent. I did want to provide you a few updates to thank you for being part of our district and community, and also to let you know that I could not be more grateful to lead during this time. Together, we will get through this, and we will be stronger on the other side of it. Last week, the governor signed an executive order that extends distance learning through the remainder of the school year. While this was expected, it was also heart-wrenching. Despite the challenges, our first priority remains the safety and well-being of all of our children and our staff. And thus, we support the guidance and we support the direction, and we will continue to partner with you to navigate this situation. Here is what we know from the governor as of this last week. We know that students will not return to school this school year and that they will receive their education through distance learning. We know that there will be no spring sports or activities, as highlighted and identified both by the governor and the Minnesota State High School League. We know that there will be no school for any student in Minnesota on May 1st and May 4th, as this day was proclaimed by the governor an opportunity for teachers to refine their lessons and distant learning plans and also to catch their breath, as we know this has been a challenge for them. We know that in ISD 728, we will provide childcare and food service on May 1st and May 4th, even though instruction will not be happening. We know that meals will be served for the remainder of the school year at the locations that have been identified, and also will continue to be free of charge for any student and child 18 years of age and younger. We know that our school, like every other school, must continue to follow the guidance from the Minnesota Department of Health as it relates to buildings, learning, facilities, and the pandemic. We know that school district must continue to allow staff to work remotely when possible. We also know that the requirement for high school students to take and pass a civics exam will now be waived for this school year because of the pandemic. We also know that summer school and extended year programming must comply with the Department of Health guidance, and that soon we will get more guidance from them and the Department of Education. When we do, we will communicate that to our families. Finally, we know that school districts were told to plan to follow the typical and approved calendar for the 2020-2021 school year and for the fall. However, we were also told in the executive order that school districts must develop plans in the case that a typical in-building school year is not possible. Again, we recognize that information is coming quickly from the Department of Health and the Department of Education, and as we continue to get guidance and direction, we will communicate with our public. I know that school closures put a burden on students, families, and staff. As a parent of 3, I'm experiencing that as well. I promise you that we will do everything we can now and in the future when our students return to ensure that every learner is successful. Our primary focuses right now are the safety and well-being of our students, relationships, and supporting our families. I continue to get hundreds of questions, emails, phone calls, and tweets from students, families, and community members each and every week. The main topics and questions that have been forwarded my way this week have been about 3 topics: graduation, food service, and spring athletics and activities. So I wanted to provide a few updates about those 3 things. Graduation. Most people are wondering, will there be a graduation? And if so, what will that look like? We would absolutely love to have a graduation ceremony in person and on site. And we are working tirelessly with our students, our families, and other folks throughout Minnesota, as well as the Department of Education and Department of Health, to figure out our options. While we all have ideas on what we would like, the data and the direction from the Department of Health will guide these decisions ultimately. We hope to have answers within the next week or 2. We have asked the question specifically to the Department of Education and Department of Health if we are allowed to have ceremonies and under what circumstances that might be able to occur. Again, we should find out in the next week or 2 if that's possible, and we will communicate that. The second topic is meal services. Many have asked if the school district is hurt financially by serving so many meals each and every day during the pandemic, and the answer is no. The current epidemic and the waiver that's provided by the state and federal government provide reimbursement for each and every meal. As a result, we are not harmed financially. Another question that is often asked is, why is it that all people 18 years of age and younger get meals instead of, for example, students in poverty or students who just enroll in ISD 728? And the answer is, again, because that waiver comes from the state and federal government, they dictate the rules and they allow that to happen. So we are grateful to be able to provide that support and grateful that that does not harm the district financially. We do continue to work with our community partners, our nonprofits, and our food shelves to ensure that no food goes to waste and that every child has sufficient food, making sure that no child goes to bed hungry. We know that that's important, and we are so proud of our staff and our community for partnering in this area. And finally, spring sports and activities. The Minnesota State High School League announced that we will not have any spring activities and athletics for the remainder of the school year. The state's announcement was intended to give everyone, including athletes, families, and school districts, time to plan and to make future decisions. While this is not the outcome that any of us had hoped for, we are thankful for the information and the continued partnership with the High School League. Our head coaches and advisors have been and are expected to continue to engage our student athletes and our families throughout the spring, and we look forward to having all of our student athletes back in play as soon as we are allowed. In terms of other news and topics, we continue to have conversations about potential grade configurations, particularly in the southern region of the districts. Grade configuration, as you might remember, has been studied and discussed throughout the last 2 years and was part of the referendum planning period. The Community Task Force evaluated district spaces as well as enrollment so that we could determine the best way to maximize enrollment and our buildings and provide the best support for our student. The Community Task Force took a lot of time over the last 2 years really thinking about it and making recommendations to the board prior to a referendum. That recommendation was made to the board publicly, and after that recommendation and after the referendum passed was then evaluated and considered by district leadership. Now, the information has been brought back to the board again at a public meeting, and much time was spent at the last work session talking about the community recommendation as well as what that might mean for the district. The school board spent much time evaluating and talking about that recommendation, and that will now be brought back to the board for May 11th for consideration and possible approval. If approved, district officials will then work with our families to ensure a smooth transition and start for the 2022 school year. The task force made the recommendations to move 5th grade to the middle schools for a number of reasons. They indicated that that model best meets the enrollment growth in the school district. They indicated that doing so would prevent the district from having to make future boundary changes, that it would allow students to attend the same schools that they always planned to attend, but just 1 year earlier. They also noted that the configurations match those in other neighboring school districts like St. Michael Albertville, which has been very successful. They also indicated that changing the configuration maximizes the space, the building space throughout the districts, and gives the district the most amount of time without having to build another school or ask the community for additional financial support to fund another school. It also gives 5 to 7 years before those discussions would need to happen. And finally, they made the recommendation acknowledging that current configurations in ISD 728 include a K-2 building, 3-5 building, E-8 building, 6-8 building, 6-12 building, 9-12 buildings, and even a birth to senior citizen building, recognizing that configurations of all different types have been successful in our school district for many years. We are confident that when approved, this configuration, like others that we have, will continue to provide a safe, productive learning environment for all of our learners. The board will continue to discuss it, and again, is expected to make a decision on May 11th. If approved, we then would work with our families to ensure a smooth transition, and we would have some time to plan for that. In addition, if approved, the transition again would not happen until 2022-2023 school year when the new school opens in Otsego. This would also only involve students in the South, specifically at Hassan Elementary, Otsego Elementary, Prairie View Elementary, and Rogers Elementary School. These students, 5th grade, would then, if approved, be moved to the new middle school in Otsego or Rogers Middle School. We are grateful for the continued dialogue and the strategic planning with our community as we continue to provide outstanding programming and quality services throughout our communities. As superintendent, I could not be more proud. Thank you for being part of our district and community. Please continue to reach out, provide feedback, and continue to partner with us to ensure all learners meet our district's mission and vision. Thank you.